Stavros Michael, who's both the local city controller and has got a really deep knowledge of Wellington's infrastructure, roading, bridges, tunnels and so on. We've also got a couple of people on hand here. Steve Cody, who is Seismic Assessment Manager, and we also have Mike Stannard from GNS if you've got any scientific questions.
He'd be like it.
Sorry. So we won't ask you the really hard technical questions, Mike. So from Ministry of Building, Innovation, Employment and everything else, and he can answer any questions on their role. So the good news is that Wellington's getting back to normal, open for business. You just see the traffic flows coming into the city. People are confident. There is a fair bit of cleaning up to do in a number of shops and offices. Some people's papers have been completely refiled on the floor, but it is generally in good shape and definitely open for business. Now, I am sure today that we are going to not be the lead story tomorrow because you'll all have royal babies to worry about. And just so that if anyone's feeling a little jumpy, there will be a 21-gun salute at midday, so we've been informed of that. So be ready for that. And the Michael Fowler Centre will be lit up blue. So we'll get those important matters out of the way and we can get back to the earthquake pavilion. We plan to move back to business as usual. Wellington Regional Emergency Management Office response now. Already fire and police have fire and police and urban search and rescue have been stood down or gone back to normal operations. And in many cases, the people coming into town are going to find absolutely no problems, but in some cases there will need to be some mopping up. We've got our own Wellington Student Army, which is terrific, Student Volunteer Army, so they've got a Facebook page. They're willing to help if anyone wants a bit of extra help. It may be that when people come into their buildings, they see signs of damage, internal damage or anything like that, we urge them to let their building owners know. If there's something that's been overlooked, don't assume everything's fine, just make somebody aware of the situation. Yesterday we said we knew of 35 buildings that had some exterior, generally superficial damage. There may be more buildings that have got something loose or a window broken, but again, we have no information. There is no evidence of any structural damage to buildings in Wellington. And that's pretty important for people's confidence in the city. We're continuing with building inspections today. Council building inspectors and independent engineers, and I'd like to thank the Ministry of Building, Business, Innovation and Employment, which includes the old Department of Buildings and Housing. So all the staff from there are very supportive and helpful. And many of the staff doing those inspections are veterans from Christchurch because we sent our building inspectors down to help with the much greater damage that was experienced in Christchurch. So they do know very much what they're looking for. Featherstone Street is the hot spot in terms of damage, and I think we've had multiple photographs of the same piece of masonry on the same footpath. That is only one spot in the city, and we have cordoned off around those dozen buildings to make sure that pedestrians are safe. The building inspectors go out with hard hats. Pedestrians do not go out with hard hats, so we're just trying to maintain people's safety and make sure that they can get to where they're going to work or shopping without being hurt. We're expecting the building owners to get on with doing the glazing work, and as soon as we've inspected any building and made sure that it's back to being safe, we'll be taking down those cordons. The glass that's fallen has been generally from older window frames. Modern buildings with modern glass and modern windows have come through very well. We've got security guards and barriers and warning signs to keep people away from the facades of the affected buildings, and there will be a need to zigzag down Featherstone Street, but we've tried to make the traffic light phasing so that that won't hold people on foot up too much. So again, it's a very important warning to the city. It really vindicates the city's investment in resilience over a number of years. Over the past 2 decades, we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on quake strengthening. And recently we've got up to, we've now got 90% of our water reservoirs have got seismic shut-off valves. We've got better water pipes that are more resilient to quakes. And you'll notice there was no loss of water supply despite having these shakes. We've also spent millions on strengthening bridges and tunnels. I think the Karori tunnel, Given and Karori must be feeling pretty pleased that all that work was completed. Now we're going to be working on the Hataitai bus tunnel and a number of other retaining walls, sea walls and so on. The edge of the port did suffer some damage, and that's reclaimed land that's been reclaimed by a particular technique. So you notice the Wellington waterfront where people walk along, that's all safe and open to walk along and enjoy as usual. We're about to start our $43 million upgrade of the town hall, and that will have the same kind of base isolation as in Te Papa, the Parliament buildings and a number of other strong buildings around the city. I'd also like to say we've invested in people. We've pioneered in this city community resilience. For example, the blue lines, the blue tsunami lines, which are world award-winning initiatives that came up through the community. Our Neighbours Day work emphasises the importance of getting to know your neighbours and being able to help each other out. And we are also pleased to know that people are already setting up earthquake response 101 so that people can make sure that they get the information they need to quake check their house, make sure that they're able to help each other. We do still have plenty of opportunity through the Regional Emergency Management Office to take new volunteers for that civil defence training. So if you're thinking, if it has been worse, you don't know what to do, take the opportunity to get that training. We've also, in 2011, we approved the reorganisation of the individual council's emergency management systems into one regional emergency management office, and that transferred over in July last year, in 2012. And Bruce Pepperell is the first regional manager, and I think it's just shown how well we work across the regional services. I'd like to acknowledge the support of Fran Wild, particularly the regional council responsibilities for transport and the port, and Jenny Rowan, who chairs our regional civil defence emergency management office. So, a bit of a reminder, update your home emergency kits. Make sure you've got your 3 days water supply. You can buy the 200-litre emergency tanks, rainwater tanks, and you don't need to buy bottled water. Perfectly fine to fill up water bottles from the tap and put those aside. And again, flat shoes, all of those basic things, please make sure you've got those at home and at work. And people, fix your bookshelves to the wall, whether it's at businesses or at home. Fix those water tanks securely and get the quake check done. It's only $160 for a building inspector to come and help you check that your house is safe. You can do it yourself if you feel competent for crawling underneath your house. We do have the quake check booklet. You can get it from council offices or you can download it from the internet. So that's main points to cover. It's great to be back to normal, living, successful life. So, any questions?
Celia, the portico and sort of square, is that going to be torn down?
We'd already agreed that that needed to be demolished, and really with the events of the last few days have confirmed the building analysis that it is, if you like, weak as part of the link in the civic square, and it will be coming down.
When will it be done?
Probably, do you know more?
April, May next year.
So it doesn't pose an immediate threat, but it doesn't increase the strength of either building on either side.
Was it disappointing for you to see the damage of newer buildings like the BNZ building and also the National Library?
Well, the actual buildings, the structural integrity is fine. They're built on the waterfront, they stood up fine. I think what it does make us do is have a look at how sprinkler systems are installed and whether there can be, just as we've got with our water pipe delivery, we've got more flexible pipes these days than the old ones, maybe sprinkler systems could do the same. Also I hear, and this is anecdotal information, that a number of the shelves in the new buildings were not secured to the wall. So it really doesn't matter whether your building is new or old, you must secure shelves to the wall and the floor.
If we get an update on the chance of a big aftershock hitting, what the chances are now in the next few days?
My understanding from yesterday's update was that the pattern is as expected with diminishing aftershocks, but that doesn't mean there could always be a big quake on the Wellington fault this hour, tomorrow, or in 10 years' time. So whatever the likelihood, we've still got to be prepared for it.
I mean, Jeannie's was putting out those probabilities yesterday, and they're sort of changing from the morning to the afternoon.
No, it's exactly the same as it was before, my understanding. So it's 19% of a magnitude 6 within a week of Sunday night shake.
And we don't want people to be complacent. This is not the big shake that we've all got through safely. There is always a possibility of a stronger shake, but I think today was the last few days have been an excellent run through to say that buildings are generally strong, the services are all working together, and people pretty much know what to do in an earthquake. We saw the kids leading the charge to drop, cover and hold wherever, whether it was the ASB centre, the libraries or wherever.
Have you had any advice on more productivity?
The only comments I've heard from Raymond lately was that because we have a lot of office work, whether it's government or financial or IT, a lot of people have been able to work at home, and really it's one day out of the year, people are back to business in general today, so I don't think there's been a huge amount of loss of productivity.
Are you expecting to get any data on that?
We haven't asked for it at the moment. It'd be interesting to see what can be gathered together. I think people are just busy getting back to work as usual.
Will the building owners that have had damage be able to make EQC claims?
I believe so, yes.
You mentioned that there's no evidence of structural damage to buildings in Wellington. Does that mean all the assessments are completed? Is that both private and publicly owned buildings?
We've done the external assessments ourselves. Might pass over to level 4 comment on the depth of those inspections.
So the inspections that we've done have been largely external. We have no rights in which to enter privately owned buildings. And where we have seen anything that we're concerned about, the building owners have been notified.
Can you predict or estimate how long it will take for both private building owners and, to be able to say categorically that there's no evidence of structural damage?
Given that nobody's found anything that causes immediate concern, we would have thought reasonably quickly.
And we've been through all of our council-owned buildings, both social housing, civic buildings like the library, and all of the swimming pools, recreation centres, community centres, and they're all fine and open. So if all of those are fine and open, we're still waiting to hear if anyone's got any more serious problems.
Can you say in how many cases building owners have been notified about anything concerning?
No, I can't. But we know that there's around 35 buildings that have got damage of some kind. So it's not going to be anything of that.
Just in light of the port situation, is there any sort of ongoing assessment of buildings that are on replanning?
One area that we have had confirmation that there's been no movement, for example, was where there was a Kingston slip. On reclaimed land, they're just examined externally the same as any other. The rather exaggerated reports of sinkholes on Featherstone Street, the minor subsidence is being worked on. Are they pretty much at the moment? Yeah, right. With really more of a dip in the pavement rather than anything more dramatic.
Majority of the city is built on reclaimed land.
On the insurance question, we already have a difficult insurance market for Wellington building owners. This isn't going to help us. Do we have any advice on that, or do you have any indication from how insurance companies are responding to this?
Well, I would have thought it would have given them a fair bit of confidence, the actual relatively minimal amount of damage, but sometimes insurance companies' motivations are not as obvious as they might be.
Well, there was an insurance council spokesman on TV last night saying that they're not writing any more reinsurance business in Wellington and the top of the North and South Island, but until they change their minds on that. I mean, that means there is no earthquake reinsurance being written in Wellington, period. And that is serious economic.
I think the line that they said last night though was it's standard practice for insurance companies to put a moratorium on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not just because of our earthquake.
No, but I think we already had 400% to 500% increases in earthquake premiums on some parts of the building in Wellington.
Well, there have been a range of differences that what our City Council has made very clear representation to our insurers, and that's actually helped our premiums go up far less than that. So I would urge people who are negotiating with their insurance company to make sure that they've got the facts in front of those companies.
Because we do have a very distressed Wellington property market. There's departments which have been up, and then there's lots of departments for sale, not selling. Except the ones that are selling are sometimes selling at half of what their previous valuations are.
Well, I think
rating valuations have gone down spectacularly.
the market is certainly encouraging strengthening of buildings. We're certainly seeing that most obviously in the office buildings, but to some extent in residential as well. The building owners do have a responsibility to strengthen their buildings.
Do we consider this as a macroeconomic problem for the city as a whole?
For some time, we have been encouraging building owners to strengthen their buildings. This is not changed overnight.
Can you confirm this, the transport, is that fully operational? I know there was some delays when it comes to the line.
Yep, our information is that the railways, the ferries, the buses and the roads are all fully operational. Featherstone Street is down to one lane in some parts, but that doesn't really make a significant difference to the city.
Any idea how long the parking buildings will be out of action?
Not at this stage. Again, we've got the parking information displays, so when the information up, we'll see that there are spaces available in those buildings. Well, I think that's probably about it. We can go back to all the baby coverage now, and I look forward. I think this is the last scheduled media briefing, but obviously if you've got follow-up questions, you can follow up with whoever you need to. Thank you.